Hey, it's the Profit Answer Man, Rocky Lalvani. If you're new to the podcast, check out my interview with Mike Michalowicz. It's episode number 2. If you want to hear about each chapter in the Profit First book, go back and listen to episodes 3 through 13. Episode 1 is the why and how. On the Profit Answer Man, we learn money mastery without all the complicated accounting mumbo-jumbo using a simple system. Your accountant is busy documenting your transactions and creating a rearview mirror of what happened. My guess is you don't even look at the reports they sent you. If you're like most business owners, you struggle with this, and it's not your fault. We aren't taught money in school, and accountants aren't taught how to be profitable. The Profit First system created by Mike Michalowicz works, and he certified me to help you implement the system in your business. Remember, the new equation is sales minus profit equals expenses. Let's face it, without cash flow, you can't pay your employees, buy needed materials, or pay your mortgage and support your family. I help you to do that and more, so you can focus on the parts of the business you love and receive the rewards for your labor and investment into your business. The stronger you are as a business owner, the more jobs you create, the better we are as a country. Small business owners are the backbone of America, and for that, you deserve to be well rewarded. Just remember, more revenue does not equal more profit. That's why we focus on the bottom line. Have you examined your inner game? You know, the voices in your head? We all have them. They hold us back. Torrin's going to chat about the inner game of running a business. When you understand yourself, you can be clear on what you want and how you serve. It becomes so much easier to achieve success, as you'll hear from his story. Torrin started his business in 1989 at the age of 24, not having attended any business school. He had plenty of enthusiasm, optimism, and courage, which helped to make it all work out. Over the last 32 years, he has bought, sold, started, ended, and failed, and succeeded in many businesses. After 24 years of fluctuating between doing okay, doing very well, and other times just getting by, and a combination of bad decisions, bad planning, and bad luck, led to him reaching the lowest ebb in his business journey. That was the catalyst to look for a new path forward. And over the next few years, he was influenced to look inward to his inner game and started to turn things around. Since 2014, he's been looking deeper and to find more sustainable answers to business growth problems. The culmination of that is the enterprise strategy, creating an ecosystem to pass on valuable lessons and the information he has learned over the last 30 years. Let's meet Torrin and learn from him. Welcome to the Profit Answer Man, Torrin Minutillo. It's great to have you join us today.
Thanks, Rocky. I'm really excited to be here and see what I learned from this experience.
As am I. Can you share a little bit about yourself and your business?
Sure. So it's been 32 years now, my business journey. I started at 24 back in 1989. This was pre-internet and pre-mobile phones. So started a long way back. And my journey is one of sort of up the mountain a little bit and then falling down the mountain. And then on the second time back up, have really made some inroads. So the first 18 years of my business life, so through to 2008 from 1989, I started and stopped and bought and sold about 8 businesses, and mostly through just following my nose. You know, I didn't really know what I didn't know. And I never went to college, never went to university, never had any sort of formal education. I just sort of had a lot of enthusiasm and drive to succeed. So those first 18, 20 years of my business life was one of just, keep moving forward and trying to do the next best thing. And I probably got caught a little bit in the shiny object syndrome, which is the reason why I was moving from one business to another, trying to find the magic bullet. So in 2000, I got into real estate. I started selling real estate while also running another small retail business at the time. And I found my niche in real estate. I really found like I really enjoyed it and I wanted to do more of that. So after about 3 years of working a couple of businesses, including real estate, I decided just to focus purely on real estate. And then within 3 years, I started my own business in 2007. And through that time, I was, married, kids, mortgages, all sorts of different things going on. So two beautiful children, married to my wife, which I'm still married to 30 odd years down the track, which is great. But in 2008 was where I had my moment of reckoning, and that was the global financial crisis, which hit us here in Australia, like everywhere else in the world. And what I found on reflection now is that I wasn't really prepared for it because I hadn't built a business with solid foundations to withstand all that. And I managed to survive through it, but that's all I did. I really survived, and it's because I was in denial about how long it was going to last and how much impact it was going to have on me. But looking back now, 10 years past that, 10 plus years or 12 years now, it was the best thing that ever happened for me because it helped me readjust to what I needed to do, who do I need to become. And so in that period of about 2 or 3 years through 2008, I started just working on myself and became working inwardly, really just trying to figure out how did I get myself in such a mess at that point in my life. And I was in my mid-40s then, and it took me about 2 or 3 years to really work through that. Lost a lot of money, pretty much, became insolvent over that period of time. But I struggled and worked through it. So I never went bankrupt or anything like that. So the better part of my story is that coming out of that, I really started working on myself. And the more I started learning about human behavior and what made people, succeed, high performance, all that sort of stuff, I really got deep into that and, became a lifelong learner and voracious reader of books and listening to podcasts and just listening to high performance people on the planet to figure out what are they doing that I wasn't. And then from there, so I built my real estate company up, which I still have now. That's, a 7-figure business that is thriving and doing really well. About 4 years ago, I decided that everything I learned, I wanted to start moving to probably what I was really meant to be doing. That was helping other people through the particular sort of journey. So I started to learn how to coach, and now, I'm about 3 years into that journey and really loving my new career as a business coach, helping other people navigate. And I draw within everything I learned on my journey to help other people. And there's a lot to unpack around how that works. So that's a very, 4 or 5 minute snapshot of 32 years.
And it sounds like the typical journey of an entrepreneur, right? Up and down and up and down and up and down until you finally figure it out for yourself and you make it. And then you go out and it's a fun ride. So along that journey, one of the things that you learned about was profit first. How did you learn about that?
It was actually through one of the coaching groups that I was in. It must be about 5 years ago now, possibly, maybe a bit more. And it was that coaching group that I was involved in just to help better myself. In fact, I was in that coaching group on learning how to coach, and they introduced me to the Profit First book. And what I learned from reading that book is that there were some things that I was doing right already, but there was a lot of things that I wasn't doing well. And so that helped me straighten my finances out. And part of building, a better foundation to the business that I have now and what I help other people understand is that, Rocky, one of the things that I learned about myself and my business previously when it didn't go well in 2000 is that I was building a V-shaped business, which was basically all open at the top, but very little foundation. And I think personal development and understanding more about yourself is about building like a pyramid type business where you've got a wide foundation. I think profit first is part of that foundational growth that you need to have to build a solid business. So there's a great saying that, if you want your structure, the higher you want your structure to be, the bigger and broader your foundations need to be. And I think that profit first is, part of that implementation process to build a solid foundation to your finances in constructing a business that you want sustainably to, and you will never the business will never outgrow who you become. So you become part of that foundational work that you need to do. And I believe that profit first in organising your finances is a really great tool to help people achieve that.
So what are some of the other foundational pillars that you look at?
Well, I think the biggest and most foundational pillar is to understand how you are getting your current results and become really aware of that. And so there's three things that I bring everything back into. I think there's three things that every problem in business has an origin or a pathway through, and fortunately they also have the solution through those. And those are having the right focus, the right connection, and courage. Every problem we have in business has an origin or pathway through one of those three things. And a lot of the coaching that I do is at a deeper level under the surface level. So all the problems show up in our business world as surface level problems. So what we need to do is figure out what's the origin of those problems. And what I've worked out over my journey is that there's three things, and that's focus, connection, and courage. And courage is probably the pillar of it all. So I think the foundational work is to understand and be aware that everything you're facing in business has an origin through those three things. And your job is to figure out which one of those three. And it could be a combination of all three or a combination of two of those. But I haven't come across a situation where someone's asked me to help them through a process where the origin isn't one of those three things. So focus, connection, and courage. And connection is one that everybody understands focus generally. We all understand courage to a certain extent. But connection is one that's interesting. So connection to yourself, connection to your market, connection to what the message is, connection to who it is you want to be, connection to who you've been. So really, connection is more that personal development and what I call psychological development over a long period of time that we all grow through. So my business is about building helping people build the foundations to build a bigger structure, which is whatever it is they're trying to achieve, not what I'm trying to achieve, but to help them through. So foundational, to answer your question, are those three things.
And it sounds like connection is almost about clarity.
Mm-hmm.
Right? In understanding who you are and how you behave, what the market is doing and how you connect to it and what you have to offer. I find most business owners, they are not clear about what they do and who they serve. It's a very murky, and if you can get that down to simplicity, it's a lot easier to connect with people who want your help.
Absolutely. And so I think talking about, one of the biggest problems I see with business owners now that I'm helping is exactly that, is understanding which is the market they want to serve, what is their value proposition that they're trying to articulate, so they first have to connect with what is their value proposition, then they need to connect with the market that's going to resonate with that value proposition. And then, of course, they need to make it profitable to sustain it. But the clarity is focus. It's like really understanding what are you clear about what your vision is, what your goals are, what you're trying to achieve. So all the vision, focus work and goals work is actually a focus problem, is understanding what you want to focus on. So as I'm saying, that at a surface level, it's like I don't have the right customers, but that's a surface problem. The deeper problem is you're not connected to your marketplace correctly. Your message is not connected to them. You're not connected with what you actually want to achieve, and you don't have the right focus in the right direction. So when you help people break this down and unpack it, they get clarity, which is focus. That's part of the solution coming out of it is focus. They get clear about who they need to connect with and what the message is. And then you need courage to do it all. So you can see how that example of connecting to your right marketplace is not simple as, all right, if I put a new marketing message out or I get a whole lot more customers through a marketing funnel, that's just going to put fuel on the fire.
So you keep mentioning courage.
Yeah.
What do you mean by courage?
That's a great question. Because we all understand courage to be, doing something that you're scared of doing, or i.e., jumping out of an aeroplane with a parachute. That's, facing courage. But your behavior that gives you your results on a day-to-day basis, when you break it down, there's a line of courage that separates you from the behaviors that are empowering you versus the behaviors that are disempowering you. And I'll just preface David Hawkins, who's a psychologist who did a 30-year study on this, about calibrating people's behaviors and how that empowers their life and disempowers their life. And what I learned through that study and reading his book a couple of times, and it's called Power versus Force. I highly recommend it. It is a little bit difficult to read because it's a little bit deep on psychological work, but you get the message. And one of the things I learned out of that is that there's a line of courage that separates our behaviours. So, for instance, blaming, complaining, withdrawing, having anxiety, manipulating. These are all below the line of courage behaviours. Above the line of courage are things like, inspiring, being taken responsibility, acceptance, empathetic, being grateful, being vulnerable, trusting. These are all above the line of courage because they take some courage to actually do or behave in that way. So when I talk about courage, it's about understanding, firstly, how much of your day in your business life are you spending below the line with all these behaviours, and how much are you spending below. Now, it's natural for all of us to shift below and above on every day. It's impossible to stay 100% above the line of courage. But what's not good is when you fall below the line of courage and you might be in a situation where you're complaining about the situation or you're blaming others, which is a human addiction, is that we blame other people for what we've got. That's below the line of courage. It's okay to be aware for an hour or so, that's what you're doing, but not for a day, a week, a month, or in some cases, people stay in that place for years. So one of the coaching tools is to map out, and I've got a map of courage, which I put in front of people and get them to understand, for them to become aware of how much time they are spending below and how much time they're above. Now, what came out of the study from David Hawkins was that 85% of the world's population consistently live below the line of courage, which is the reason why they don't empower to get what they want. But as a coach and as a business person, as an entrepreneur, which was where my focus is in helping people, is to get them to understand is that when they consistently live above the line of courage, it impacts everything else they're doing in their world. So when you are a place or a new value proposition or whatever it is you're trying to do, if you take the attributes of above the line of courage towards that consistently, it'll empower you and move you towards where it is you want to get to. So that's breaking down courage from a different perspective, as opposed to courage in the form of I'm fearful of doing something or an activity and I move past that. So where it all starts, Rocky, is that, we're all insecure about things. We want to be safe. Our brain is built to keep us safe. So when you're not feeling safe, it shows up as fear, that you're not safe about what it is you're trying to achieve. So going back to profit first, the reason why people don't implement or don't understand it is because they don't feel safe about where it's going to take them and what it's going to do, because they're too conditioned in their belief systems about how they've got to where they've got to. So it's a process of breaking down belief systems that may not be serving you well, to changing your belief systems to what will serve you well. And I think, part of what we said before is from a foundation perspective, I think profit first and the principles that it teaches you is a good foundation to actually keep you safe in your business, to help you put the money in the right place that it needs to be able to save for, so when I talk about a V-shaped business or a pyramid, is that when luck comes along, good or bad, when you've got a pyramid-based business with a profit first system, you'll capitalize on the luck and you'll be able to withstand the bad luck. But when you don't have a foundational strong business, when bad luck comes along, it'll tip you over. And when good luck comes along, you won't be prepared to take hold of that opportunity. So I think the work that I do with helping business owners, and interesting for me, it's like working with business owners who've probably been through some struggle. And you mentioned before that a lot of the entrepreneurial pathway is to, possibly get to where it is the place you want to get to, but then often you fall down. And I think it's because of the foundational work that's not been put in along the way. And sometimes you think you're going really well, but then as soon as, a problem, and we're facing, world crisis at the moment with all sorts of different reasons, the businesses that are thriving through this are the ones that have got great foundations and built on solid sustainability versus ones that are built on a V shape, which is no foundation. And they're the ones that are tipping over. And metaphorically, a V is easy to fall over. A pyramid doesn't fall over, which is the reason why the pyramids in Egypt have been there for, I don't know how long, but we're talking a long, long time. I don't know, did that answer your question around courage?
It did, and I think it makes a lot of sense. I mean, most business cycles are about 10 years long, and most businesses can't survive more than 10 years, and it's because when the business cycle goes against you, if you haven't built the foundation, then you won't withstand the wind that comes along with a down business cycle. And they happen pretty consistently. I think when you've got the wind at your back, it's really easy to be good in business. And then sometimes you get courageous when you shouldn't, in the sense that you're overconfident in your business, but you just happen to be in the right place at the right time, which there's nothing wrong with it. It's wonderful to have good luck in being able to do that. So you kept talking about above the line and below the line. Can you give an example of something that's above the line, an example that's below the line?
Yep. So in business, first I'll start with below the line, which is something that has become very common in the work that I do. So when you get a bit of a struggle in your business, one of the things that most of us do, and I say most of us because I'm guilty of it as well, is that we withdraw from a circumstance or a situation. So that's a below the line of courage behavior, is that you withdraw from it. You may not face a problem that you know is nagging that you need to deal with. And so you go into your comfort zone, which is moving away from the problem. And so that means that you're now withdrawing from a circumstance or situation. And I think anybody listening to this will have a situation in their time in business where that's exactly what they do. In fact, a lot of people do this on a regular basis, is that, like you said, when the wind's at your back and things are going well, it's easy to be out of your comfort zone and working hard towards what it is you want to achieve. But as soon as it becomes a little bit difficult, one of the below the line of courage behaviors is to withdraw. And I see this a lot in business owners. From that, you're looking to blame someone else for why you are in the situation you're in. And often it's, governments, markets, you're blaming everybody else. So that's an example that you're withdrawing from a difficult situation. So an above the line of courage example of how to, fix that is to become intentional about what you want to do, is to understand. So everything starts with intent. So if you've got the right attitude and you want to see, even though if you may not necessarily have the answers, it's having the intent to figure out and face the problem and deal with it. Generally, I believe at a deeper level, because if you're only dealing at the surface level of a problem, you'll get surface level solutions, and that's not sustainable because it'll just roll on to the next. In other words, if you just go and implement another new marketing funnel system to bring more customers through the front door, but you haven't fixed your foundation of your work in your business, you won't capitalize on the benefit of all those customers that may come in, right? So what ends up happening is you get despondent and you withdraw from doing that, so you don't do any marketing, right? So you withdraw from that. And we know as business owners and entrepreneurs is that you always got to be out there, promoting, depending on what stage of business you're at. Some people are fortunate enough to get to a stage where the business is coming to them versus them chasing, and every industry is different. So I think an example of above the line of courage is being intentional. The other two big distinctions. So below the line of courage is fear. Is central to everything is fear. So the reason why we withdraw, because we're scared about the outcome or we're concerned. So again, brain is built on safety, keep us safe. Trust is what shows up when you feel safe with someone, a situation, a circumstance. So behaving in trusting yourself trusting the people you're connected with, trusting the system that you're putting in place. Trusting is the only time you ever feel that you're trusting anything is because you feel safe about it. Otherwise, you wouldn't trust it. So trust shows up as you're feeling safe about something, which is above the line of courage. Below the line of courage is when you're not feeling safe about something, you feel fear, and it creates anxiety, anything. So a distinction, as I said, between the two is that example is that as an entrepreneurial, by the way, this map of consciousness, which is what David Hawkins called it, and I call it the map of courage because how I've implemented it. This is not just a business thing. This is a life thing, right? That just shows up in business and shows up in relationships and health and well-being and finances and investing. It shows up in every areas of our life, this how we behave. And so, being grateful for what you've got is also a process of living above the line of courage. And, one of the things I say to my clients and people I talk to is that, the line behind you is a lot longer than the line in front of you based on where you're at on your journey. And so being grateful for the fact of where you are on that line, and of course you want to strive to move up that line, but the other thing about this line of courage, Rocky, is that, leadership lives above the line of courage. Feeling happy about where you are in your life lives above the line of courage. When you're consistently living below the line of courage, it impacts all areas of your life, including your business. So for me, it's a central pillar into helping people understand how to advance forward from where they are. I'm getting good results with clients that I'm working with. This all goes hand in glove with a whole lot of other parts. It's never just one thing, of course. It's there's lots. There's never one silver bullet. So if anybody's looking for the one silver bullet to get them to where they want to go, they might become disappointed over a period of time.
It takes a lot of courage to start a business. Most people want to, but most people don't. And so that in itself of you making that courageous step puts you way towards the front of the line.
Correct.
And I think people should just realize that. And then you made that statement that you are much further along than most people think that they are. And so sometimes it's just counting your blessings and understanding that you have taken those courageous steps and that you can do it. And that is a very, very big part of it. And I think that's the part that people sometimes forget in that whole journey.
Yeah, and I think, it's a good reflection in that just becoming aware of the courageous decisions that you've had to make to put yourself as a business owner. My understanding, based on which data I look at, there's only 10% of the world working population that are in business. It's the other 90% work for the 10% that own the businesses. And there are people who will get into business because they've got that entrepreneurial spirit, but they find themselves after 1, 3, 5 years that it's not for them. And again, the reason is that safety. They want that safety first of having a paycheck. They know what they're going to get at the end of every week, which gives them safety and security in their life. Whereas most entrepreneurs, they don't want the safety of just knowing what they get. They want to be able to, they want to know, how can I get more and how can I achieve more? So that's what creates entrepreneurial spirit, is that you don't want to work for someone else and be set on what you achieving. And I think there's a great little anecdote about the guy that sort of says to the business owner, how can you live not knowing what you're going to be paid at the end of each week? And the entrepreneur says to the guy, well, how can you live knowing exactly what you're going to get at the end of every week? Right. So it's just a different mindset and a different shift of way of looking at it. So there's only a certain percentage of people that I don't want to say that only people that are in business have courage, because that's not the case. I think that being able to sustain in business over a long period of time requires a level of courage to be able to work through all the ups and downs and all the hard times, because struggle is actually part of getting to where it is you want to get to, and it's difficult. So having a framework, and I think that this map of courage that I've learned and implemented in my life and in the clients that I help through their journey, it's a good tool. It's a good map for them to be able to fit, because everybody understands in their life, when they're blaming or complaining or, and the other thing too is that there's no control in living below the line of courage. When you're above the line of courage, you get empowered and you're now in control of where you want to go and where you want to get to.
So you've got a book that came out recently. Would you like to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So I wrote a book, I think it was published in May last year, so 2021. And the book is called The Essential Inner Game, which is talking about your inner game versus outer game. So the way I describe that is your inner game is everything that happens in behind the scenes that nobody that gets to see. So, and the best way to describe it, Rocky, is like when you go to a show and you go to the theatre, what you get to see is what's on the stage. That's the outer game. What's happening in behind for that show to create that performance to get what they're on. There's a whole lot of things that are going on. And so if you think about your business in that context, is that everybody gets to see your marketing funnel and how you interact with your clients and customers, but what they don't get to see is your thought process and how you're working through things and how you're achieving what you're trying to achieve. So that's your inner game. So I wrote a book called The Essential Inner Game, and it's 10 insights and guiding principles every business leader should know to achieve money and time freedom. And what I've done is just broken down 10 principles that I've found that are very useful in creating a good mindset and a good way to build a foundation to a business. And each little chapter is one of the principles. It's a 2.5, 3 hour read. It's about 120 odd pages. So it's not, it's not like War and Peace. And it's something that you can go back to on each chapter that may resonate you. So there might be one principle that resonates with you based on where you're at on your journey. And so you may be able to go back to that chapter and each chapter is only like a 15-minute read, possibly thereabouts. So at the moment, I've got that available on my website for free. It's a complimentary book. It's a real book. It's not a PDF. So if you fill in the details there, I'll send it to you in your letterbox. I'd hope a lot of people get something out of it to help them on their journey, because we're all at a different stage on our entrepreneurial journey. And I think that there's lots of good advice and lots of good help out there. But my message is get courageous about what you're doing. Understand, I think, those 3 pillars: courage, connection, and focus, as a foundational pillar to what you're doing and what it is that you're trying to achieve. And if anybody wants some help or wants to chat to me, reach out.
Cool. If people would like to do that, can you share your website and what the best place for them to be able to connect with you is?
Yeah, the easiest and best place, you can find me on LinkedIn just under Torrin Minutillo, or my website is Attergy, so it's ATTERGY.com. That's a made-up word, which I decided to call my business, which is the foundation of what I think you need, and that's attitude and energy. So those 2 words combined made the word Attergy. And I've got my system of coaching, which I've developed, is Attergy Coaching Systems. But if you go onto the website, attergy.com, you'll get some info there. And there, right on the front page, there's a place where you can ask for a complimentary copy of my book, and I'll put that in the mail to you. And then, I'd be interested in feedback.
Very cool. We'll make sure that's in the notes and make it easy for people to find it. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Rocky. It's been great. I enjoyed it.
Do you have the courage to face the situations you don't want to? For example, a bad employee, maybe a bad service provider to you, and even a bad client. Profit First helps to provide the financial courage to withstand the downtimes and the ability to leap when new opportunities show up and opportunities are there that you can hit grand slams with. Remember, you don't need more resources. You need to be more resourceful. We focus on the bottom line. If you want a done-for-you service, you can have me as your Chief Profitability Officer, because you have your zone of genius and want to spend your time doing what you love. I only work with a handful of clients, so they get my full attention. I work with business owners who have or are growing to $500,000 to $5 million in revenue. You can use the scheduling link in the show notes to get on my calendar for a good fit conversation to see if I'm the right person to support you and how I can help you. If you want to learn about living the life of your dreams, check out my other podcast, Richer Soul. As we close out, let's repeat the mantra. Revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, and cash is king. Have an abundant and profitable week.